I am Leela Oakley, and I'm the Outreach and Engagement Manager at Just Faith Ministries. And I'm so thankful to have each of you with us today, whether you're on the West Coast or East Coast and joining us midday or in the afternoon. So welcome again. We hope to have a great hour together. And in a moment, I'm going to turn it over to our program director, Kristen Dollar. But before I do that, I wanted to let you know kind of an outline of where we're going today. So we will begin with a guided meditation. Then we're going to share with you a video by Just Faith Ministries, lead you in a prayer, and then get into the content of the presentation where we will be reviewing all of our programs that we're offering in 2021, as well as giving you a little sneak preview into our upcoming program releases. So you're getting some insider information by being with us today. And then I'll share with you some steps for how to get started. So if you find one of our programs captivating and you want to bring it to your community, whether that be your church or a group of friends, I'll give you some tips about how to get started. So with that being shared, Kristen, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Hi, friends. Let's just start out our time together today by taking a deep breath. And I'm going to ask you all to silently consider a question. It's kind of a big one, and maybe it even has to do with the reason why you decided to join this meeting today. And that question is, what is it that you most deeply yearn for in your church, in your community, in the world? What is it that you yearn for yourself? How about, what is something happening in your community or in our world that weighs deeply on your heart? Now I invite you all to take a minute to picture a person, or maybe it's even a community, who takes action to respond to the world's needs, and who maybe even inspires you to do the same. So with that, we're now going to watch a video about us at Just Faith Ministries, which will tell you a little bit about who we are and how we seek to fit into some of those questions that I just asked.
Consider with me for a moment the world and your place in it. Your faith alive here in God's wide world.
Isolation, rejection, injustice,
division,
poverty, violence,
homelessness,
fear, thirst,
hunger.
The boundless beauty and love of God washing the whole world, and yet still within us.
Hate, abuse, ignorance,
exploitation,
racism, desperation, white supremacy,
inequality,
injustice.
In the Gospels, Jesus teaches that the fully alive person is someone who loves wide. To be whole and holy, says Jesus, is to care not only about those closest to us, our friends, our family, our front yard, but what's beyond. This we believe, that our Christian faith necessarily draws us into relationship with all of our sisters and brothers, caring for the poor, the outcast, the immigrant, the hungry. This is not supplemental to our faith. It's essential. Just Faith Ministries connects and prepares people of faith for the life-changing, world-changing call of the gospel to help heal the world, and in so doing, experience a deeper faith, a more fulfilling life, and a community of care and vitality. When you walk into a Just Faith group, you find a circle of friends who have committed to spend the next 8 to 24 weeks together. They will engage in a process carefully designed to educate and spark meaningful discussions around key topics of justice in our world, as well as how to respond in love and faith.
I think what Just Faith does is helps people to discern where they have energy and passion about mission, about justice, about peace. And I think it gives them the tools to be able to go into the world and take action.
We believe in justice, and we believe that as people of faith, we need to be active in our community.
As individuals in community, we are challenged to participate in the transformation of the world.
We're always kind of looking for the same kind of community that we felt and experienced in Just Faith.
Just Faith is unique in that it's not an end in itself. The whole point of the process is a commissioning, to go out into the community to meet and join hands with those already hard at work building a more just and peaceful world. Just Faith will introduce you to hundreds of ministries, nonprofits, and projects in the United States and around the world who need people like you. Connect with them, discover your passion, and go find a first step to get to work. More than 60,000 people have come to a Just Faith group. They've discovered new possibilities for their lives. They have discovered with fresh eyes a gospel that is drawing them into new ministries, committed to the good of those who have suffered neglect and deprivation. They have also found friendships and a deeper faith and purpose for their lives. Good news, to be sure. But most important, the work of compassion changes the world. Those who need food are fed. Those who need community find friends. Those who need homes are housed. Those who need inspiration are renewed. Those who have been wronged find justice. Those who have been self-preoccupied are freed. The boundless beauty and love of God washing the whole world with us and through us. Consider with us again for a moment the world and your place in it. Your faith, alive, here in God's wide world.
As Jack says, the whole point of this process is the commissioning. The goal of our programs is to create a community of learning and transformation so that folks like you and me can seek to answer some of those questions that we started out with in the very beginning, and ultimately so that we can then go out into the world to love God and to do justice more effectively and more faithfully. And because the point is the commissioning, for our opening meditation, I chose a sending prayer, and this prayer is by Jan Richardson. Let us pray. It is a strange thing to be so bound and so released all in the same moment, to feel the heart open wide and wider still, even as it turns to take its leave. On this day, let us say, this is simply the way love moves in its ceaseless spiraling, turning us toward one another, then sending us into what waits for us with arms wide open to us in welcome and in hope.
On this day, in this place where you have poured yourself out, where you have been emptied and filled and emptied again, may you be aware more than ever of what your heart has opened to here, what it has tended and welcomed here, where it has broken in love and in grief, where it has given and received blessing in the unfathomable mystery that moves us, undoes us, and remakes us, finally for joy.
This day, may you know this joy in full measure. This day, may you know this blessing that gathers you in and sends you forth, but will not forget you. Oh, hear us as this day we say grace. This day we say grateful. This day we say blessing. This day we release you in God's keeping and hold you in gladness and love. Amen. So welcome again, everybody. As Leila mentioned, we today will just be sharing a little bit about our programs that we're offering in 2021. You've already heard a little bit about Just Faith Ministries and who we are. If you're new to us, we welcome you. Here's a quote that you can read by Jack Jazriel, our founder, who you saw in the video. And with that, I'll just launch right into some of our programs. So first up, I want to talk a little bit about our Eco-Justice series. There's 3 programs. You can choose to do one, or you can choose to do all of them. Each of them have about 10 sessions in them. Sacred Land is the first one in the series. It's called Sacred Land, Food and Farming, and it explores how food and farming practices affect the climate crisis, marginalized communities, in our own health and spiritual well-being. This is a really important topic, not just for folks who are in the, for people who more rural folks, but also people in urban areas. Agriculture and food and farming have so much to do with climate change. There is also something that we have a lot of power to do something about in our own communities. One climate scientist says we have the opportunity to vote with our forks. And so this is something that, whether we're in churches or communities, and even just in our families, it's a great way to be able to really make a difference by learning about this and learning about how we can work for change more effectively. And so next you can see some of the sessions, which will give you kind of an overview of what is in this program. And again, we're happy to give you more information about any of these programs if you call us, and there's more information also on our website. I'm just kind of doing a broad overview here so you can kind of see if anything piques your interest. Something that's really important in this is scripture and theology are woven throughout. We read Laudato Si in all 3 programs by by Pope Francis. And in this particular book, one of the books is called Braiding Sweetgrass, and it gives a Native American perspective, spirituality to this work as well. The next program is called Sacred Air, Climate and Energy. And that one explores the impact of the climate crisis on God's creation and God's people. As the name suggests, it really gets at climate. It talks about, we all think that we know a little bit about climate change, and this really breaks it down to dispel some common myths so that we can know that for our own benefit and know how to act and engage in action more effectively, and also so we can help to educate those around us about the climate crisis. There's a big emphasis on environmental justice and how the climate crisis particularly affects folks who live on the margins and communities of color. Environmental racism is a big part of this, and how we can work for a healthier planet and healthier people who live on it. And here you can see some of the sessions throughout. I'll particularly call out session 5. This can be really spiritually daunting work, and it can take a heavy toll on us emotionally as well. And so throughout, and especially in session 5, about midway through, there are opportunities to process and to lament and to really grieve what we lost through environmental degradation, but also look for ways that we can transform that darkness into light and hope and action. Just Engagement is a program on organizing and advocacy. This is a really important program, and I'll use this analogy that you might have heard before. Outside I have a basil plant, and if that basil plant is not doing well, I can water it more, and I can make sure that it has sunlight and nutrients and all those things. But if I look around and all of the plants in my yard are doing something similar, they're looking a little bit droopy, I might want to ask some questions about the soil and really get at the root of the problem. A similar thing happens with injustice, whether we're talking about racism, economic injustice and poverty, whether we're talking about our broken immigration system. It is absolutely important to respond to the urgent needs of people experiencing injustice. However, we also have to get to the root of the problem, and we do have the power to do that through mobilizing people, through mobilizing our friends and our family, our churches, to respond and to change policies and to change laws. And so this program is as a 101 for folks who want to change these policies and be effective at it, in whatever issue that you're interested in, whichever issue you care about. And so you can see a little bit here what some of the topics are. The next one is hunger, a faith and justice response. Obviously, this one is about hunger, and it gets at food insecurity. There's a particular, even though we also talk about global issues, there's a particular focus on our local communities, because there's a lot that we can do to help alleviate hunger and food insecurity. It also gets at some systemic issues as well, the food deserts and why communities of color are often faced with food deserts, and what we can do to not have food deserts anymore. I like to think that this is a program where if you are in a congregation or a community where folks are really nervous to talk about social issues, this is a really good one to start with that can really bring people together. It's also a great program, and when you engage in action, it's one that children and youth can get involved in as you think about how you'll respond to what you learned as well. And a lot of churches have, a lot of congregations have hunger programs already, and this will help you to engage in that work more effectively. And so here you can see some of the topics that are addressed. Our next one is cultivating nonviolence. We realize that this word nonviolence, there's a lot of misconceptions about it, and so I want to get at a few misconceptions so that you can kind of understand why this is, why this is important to us at Just Faith Ministries, and why we have a program on it, and why that we hope that other people will be passionate about this as well. One misconception about nonviolence is a lot of people see that word and they read that as being passive about issues of injustice, and nonviolence is not that. Nonviolence is, well, the word "non" is, we're not being violent, and neither are we being passive. We're looking for a creative third way to more effectively solve problems. A second misconception that people often have is that this is just for folks who are like Gandhi, like Dr. King, people who are really have this talent for leading people and for creating change in their communities that I, as an ordinary person, just don't have. And that is absolutely not true. In this program, you'll learn how nonviolence can help to lead movements. It's a strategy to lead movements, but it can also be a part of our daily lives, our conversations. And we'll learn how, nonviolence becomes a strategy, and it becomes a part of who we are as well. And a third misconception, I think, is that it's an ineffective strategy, and that's just not true either. Some of the most effective change in our country has come about through nonviolent action. And next are some topics that are covered in the program. You learn about some of the history of the nonviolent movements that have been effective, structural violence. There's also nonviolence in our relationships as well. Faith and immigration justice. This is one of my favorite programs, and it obviously is about immigration policies and how we can create policies that are more effective and compassionate. And it also calls not just for systemic change, but it helps people to discern how they can extend hospitality towards our immigrant neighbors in our own communities. And this program gets at I think it's a really good 101 for people who, might even think that they know a lot about this issue already, but maybe haven't had an opportunity to dive deep into some of the underlying issues of broken immigration policy. It's really great for folks who might even think very differently and come at this issue from possibly even opposing viewpoints. There's an awesome simulation in here, is one of my favorite sessions, where folks get a card that will tell a real life story of someone who has come to the United States. And it takes you through the process of trying to become a citizen, and it kind of shows how difficult that is, who's allowed into the country and who's not, so on and so forth. And there's lots of opportunities in this program for action as well. Faith and Racial Equity is the first of our 3-part series on racial justice. And these programs, you can either take this Faith and Racial Equity first, or we have a program I'll talk about in just a minute called Faith and Racial Healing. This one is called Faith and Racial Equity, Exploring Power and Privilege. And so, as the title suggests, it introduces a framework for understanding the racial disparities in our society, and takes a deeper dive into issues related to power and privilege. And in the first 4 sessions of this program, it really introduces that framework. And I'll kind of summarize it like this. It's there's a lot more complexity to it, but the author, David Foster Wallace, he talks about it in his speech. He says that there's 2 small fish that are swimming along, and this older fish comes up and passes them, and he says, "Hey boys, how's the water?" And the 2 little fish keep on swimming, and eventually one of them looks to the other and says, "What the heck is water?" So this program helps us to learn to see the water, so to speak, to understand those norms and practices and those things that are embedded into our culture that we might not have the opportunity to see because they're so normal to us. It gets at how race is constructed and how cultural messages influence how we think about race, how we see one another, and how we see ourselves. So that's the first 4 sessions really get at that framework. The next 4 sessions get at some examples of how exactly that plays out in our society today, and how we can be a part of dismantling racism in whatever institutions we're a part of, be it our churches, our workplaces, our local communities, our neighborhoods. The second program, and again, you could take these 2 in whichever order, is it guides participants in telling the truth about the history of racism in the United States, so that we might be able to work towards true reconciliation with God and restoration with one another. This program particularly focuses on the African American experience of racism in the United States. It starts out with pre-slavery and what life was like in Africa before enslavement, and it narrates history up until through the civil rights movement. It's embedded throughout the opportunity to hear spirituals, which really get at some of the faith and the spirituality of people who were enslaved. Faith and Racial Justice is the last program in our 3-part series, and that is invites folks to look at the systems and structures that uphold racism in our country, and then to discern how we can work together to dismantle those systems and structures. So you'll see each session looks at a different structural issue related to racial justice, the wealth gap, redlining, reparations, and there's a huge emphasis on criminal justice reform, because we know that that's something that communities are particularly passionate about right now. And we want to be able to give folks tools for being able to engage in that work. At the same time, if you're more interested in other aspects of racial justice, there's definitely those opportunities as well, and exposure to that as well. Engaging Spirituality is our program for those who are committed to the justice work and need that centering part of their life in order to really ground their work for justice and do their justice work better. It's a 3-part series, and it teaches folks about different spiritual practices from the contemplative tradition. And again, the intention is to really ground the work that they're doing to love their neighbors more and more each day. And that the first part of that is the first program in the series is called Creating Space for Self and Others. It introduces some of the spiritual practices, and there's emphasis particularly on wonder, gratefulness, and community. The next program requires a little bit more courage, as it is an opportunity to delve into some of the darkness of our world today. So it explores suffering and mystery, loss and grief, and looks at where is God's presence during these times. And the last program in the series is a turn to hope and healing, and how God is a part of that every step of the way. The Just Faith series and Just Faith Catholic series, we also call it the Faith and Poverty series, really focuses on poverty and how we can stand in solidarity with folks experiencing poverty, and how we can help to alleviate poverty, particularly in our local communities. It's a 3-part series, and there's 2 options. You can either go the route where it's through an ecumenical lens, open to folks from a variety of denominations, including Catholic folks. Or you can choose the version that is specifically Catholic, that has a big emphasis on Catholic social teaching and sees everything in the series is through that lens of Catholic social teaching in the Catholic tradition. The first program is the foundational program, and that really helps folks to assume a posture that will be helpful in engaging in this work and is in line with their faith. And so, because sometimes it's easy to jump into this work because of our passion and our authentic desire to want to help and to fix. Sometimes we can get ourselves into some trouble, and occasionally do more harm than good, even though we have the best of intentions. And so this program really helps us to enter into this work of helping to alleviate poverty with a mindset of humility and solidarity. Program 2 looks at obstacles that people in poverty often face, and it will get into some misconceptions about the social networks. There's an emphasis on housing. There's also information on trauma and addiction, and and so it looks at the obstacles that are barriers to getting out of poverty. And then program 3 looks at the structural issues that keep people in poverty. And these include things like environmental degradation, keeps people in poverty, racism, a broken immigration system. And it looks at how it invites folks to discern how they can be a part of dismantling those systems that trap people in poverty. So you can look at, this is the first program, and so you can see some of the themes that are covered in this this program, and it's very heavy on the theology. And you can see some of the things that are covered in the second program, solidarity response. One thing to emphasize is that a lot of times folks underestimate the cost that it takes to actually make a living, and it looks at some of workers' rights and things like that, health. And this is the program on justice, and you can see some the third program, and you can see some topics that are covered in that. Good News People is a program that's specifically for a Catholic audience. However, while many folks on our staff are Catholic, I'm a United Methodist pastor, and I've looked thoroughly through the program, and there's nothing in there that, you know, by any means contradict the teaching of the mainline Protestant church. So I think it's through a Catholic lens, but would be relevant to really anyone from a Christian denomination. It focuses on some his basic Christian principles and basic Christian theology. As it says here, there's 14 sessions, so it's structured a little bit differently from the rest of our programs, but there's a rhythm to it. So there's prayer and Lectio Divina, dialogue, conversation. It talks about just important tenets of our faith. And last but not least, we also have a youth series that's kind of new. And again, this one's structured a little bit differently too, in that they're topic based. And so you can purchase a topic as a 2-part. So you would purchase one it would be 2 sessions, and it would be on a topic such as racial justice, or it could be on human trafficking or another justice topic. And so the first one, the first session would provide the grounding, the faith-based grounding and the subject matter itself. And then the second program would be very interactive, and it would walk you through accompanying youth in an immersive experience in the local community, or inviting a guest speaker to come speak on the matter. It's all designed, all youth ministries tend to look very different, so it's designed to be really flexible. So the timing's flexible. You can adapt the material, or suggestions for how to adapt the material to the specific needs of your youth. And we recommend this program for high schoolers, and we think that the adults would tend to find this relevant as well, who are accompanying them. Here are some of the topics that we offer. And again, you would purchase one of those topics, and it would be a 2-part, 2-session. And I'm really excited to get to announce that we have 2 programs coming up. The first one that's coming up in the fall, we're looking at mid-October, is on civil dialogue and justice. We don't have a name for this yet, but we're looking at, we're currently piloting a program on how to have tough conversations with one another in this time of deep divisions in our country. And this would be relevant to folks who are really concerned about the polarization they see politically, but it's also really relevant to folks who just want to have deeper connections and with their spouses, with their family members, with their children. It gets at how to have tough conversations and how to have those conversations in a way that stays true to our own deepest values and stays true to ourselves, while also deepening our connections with one another, even when we disagree. The next program in the spring that will come out, we don't have a date for it yet, will be the 3rd program in our Eco-Justice series. It will be called Sacred Water, Oceans, and Ecosystems. And the topics will be exactly how the name sounds. It'll be about our water systems, clean water, pollution, why those things are important, and how we can get involved in clean water. And I think that is it. So I'm going to turn it over to Leela, who's going to tell you a little bit about what to expect.
Great, thank you, Kristen. Before I jump into this slide, I want to let you all know that you can submit questions through the chat. So I'd invite you to send those over to me, Leela, and I'll moderate our Q&A today. Just since we have a number of you on the call, it'll be easier to navigate questions that way. And something I meant to mention at the beginning, but forgot, is that this is being recorded, and we will send you a copy of this recording along with a PDF of these slides to review again if you'd like to, or to share with a family member, or friend, or fellow coworker, or someone in your faith community. So what can you expect with Just Faith Ministries programs? Our programs are traditionally 8 sessions in length. So the exceptions to that are Good News People and the Youth for Justice programs. But everything else is 8 sessions in length. Those 8 sessions include an opportunity to invite a guest speaker to come and speak to your small group. Oftentimes that's about midway through the program. And the guest speaker is someone who is a topic expert. So it might be someone within your faith community. It might be a coworker. It might be a local organizer who's doing work around the issue you're exploring. It's another way to learn and to grow and to interact with someone who is in the field engaged around that topic. In addition to those 8 sessions, you also have an opportunity for an immersion experience. And an immersion experience is a time for the small group to engage with an organization or a group of people who are bringing about justice in the area that you're studying. So for example, a group that's doing the hunger program might engage with a local advocacy group advocating for issues of hunger in the local area. And in the midst of COVID, we acknowledge that it's challenging for groups to go into, as a large group, to gather and then to go into an organization or a nonprofit and meet. And so those immersion experiences for a time might have to be virtual, but there's a lot of great ways to creatively engage around an immersion experience virtually. Our programs are designed for small groups. So they're designed from anywhere between 7 to 12 individuals to go through this 8-session journey together. We recommend that each program have about 2 co-facilitators. It can be facilitated by one person or 3, but our recommendation is 2 facilitators, and then the rest of the folks be participants. If you're planning to lead your small group via Zoom or another video conferencing platform, we'd recommend a little bit of a smaller group size, somewhere between 7 and 10. It just allows for a deeper sense of connection, and it allows for facilitators to manage that time more easily with a smaller number of folks. Our programs are available to be done in a virtual and an in-person format. And they can even be done in a hybrid model. And what I mean by that is you could start your group virtually, and if you are wanting to and it's safe to move to an in-person gathering, or vice versa. So you have that flexibility. All of our programs are 2 to 2.5 hours long sessions, and we are in the process of transitioning all of our programs to 2-hour long sessions with an optional 30-minute add-on for groups that would like that extended time together. In between each of the session meetings, there are weekly assignments, which are drawn from the books that are a part of the program. Sometimes they're articles or videos and spiritual practices to engage with throughout the week. Those weekly assignments take on average about an hour to complete. So that's just good to know as you're promoting the program, that you're letting folks know what those expectations are. A typical session outline, if you're not familiar, all of our programs begin with a welcome and opening prayer, and they end with a closing prayer or meditation. In between, we have 2 big chunks for dialogue. There'll be one section that is centered around a part of a weekly assignment, most often the reading that was done for that week, to allow for reflection and sharing among participants. And then there'll be another time of dialogue that might be centered around a video or an activity to engage in a deeper exploration of the topic that's being discussed that day. And then there's always time for a quick break to stretch your legs, get some water, and to rejoin with the group. If you're interested in one of our programs, there's a few steps you can take. The first is to learn more. Again, you can ask questions in the chat right now, and we can field more questions about each of these programs. You can also visit our website, justfaith.org, and download a session overview, a sample session for any of the programs that you're interested in. Once you've identified a program, you'll then go to register, which you can do on our website, justfaith.org. Each of these programs is $225. The only exception is Good News People, which the pricing for Good News People is $25 for a facilitator binder and $15 for a participant binder. And then the Youth for Justice program, which has a bundling system for its pricing. So I can add that in the chat in a minute if anyone's interested. But that $225 fee allows you access to that program for a year within your church or organization to run that small group. And it's a one-time fee for the group. I will let you know that in 2022, it's hard to believe that we're going to be in 2022 soon enough, we will be adjusting our registration model to an individual registration model, which means that there will no longer be this large group fee, but every individual will get to be invited to pay an individual registration fee. We will have scholarship support available so that that registration fee is not a barrier. And most likely the registration will be on a sliding scale. We're still solidifying some of those details, and we'll be sure to update you as soon as we have that figured out in preparation of the registration process change. Once you know what program you want to do and you've registered and accessed the material, you can begin asking yourself some questions like, how do we want to meet, by Zoom or in person? Who would be good facilitators for this program? It might be, if you're asking that question, that you're one of those people who might be a facilitator. So begin thinking about that. We have a ton of support for facilitators, from trainings to training support documents and videos. So if you decide to take on that role, you are not alone and will be well supported. Then it's setting a start date and beginning the recruitment process. All of our programs have a free downloadable promotion kit that you can get on our website, which provides you with a program booklet that gives information about the program. It provides you with text for bulletin announcements or social media posts. We've really tried to do our best to give you everything you would need to get the word out and draw people into this experience together. So with that, I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and we will open up for a time of questions. So if you'll just give me one moment, I'll review the chat and begin the Q&A. Okay, Kristen, I've got a question for you. The first question is, what is the format of your videos? So how are people actually watching the videos in the session or as a part of the weekly assignment?
Oh, great question. It depends. Sometimes the videos are shown in session, especially if they're shorter videos. However, sometimes participants are asked to watch them for homework, particularly if they're a little bit longer.
Great. And I'll add to that, probably 95% of our videos are free videos available on YouTube. So there are links that you click on and you access through YouTube. There's another small percentage that's free, but through other sites. And then there are a few videos in some of our programs that do require additional payment. And it might be that it's the only way they're available are through Amazon for rent for $2. Or we have, for example, in the Faith and Racial Equity program, a documentary that is available through a streaming service called Canopy, which you purchase through Just Faith Ministry. So there are about 5% of videos in all of our programs that do require additional payment, but we try to keep that the cost as reasonable as possible, finding the cheapest way to access those. And we only include those paid videos when we really feel like they're a critical part of the program. Someone has asked about the Just Faith Catholic program in particular and about how long the weekly assignments will take. So do you guess between 1 to 2 hours, Kristen, or would you say 2 hours plus to complete those weekly assignments for that program?
I would say about 1 to 2 hours, probably more in the end of 1 hour or so.
Great. And someone has asked about the facilitator trainings. So those facilitator trainings are offered twice a month, and I lead the trainings, and we go through an overview of the role of a facilitator. So what are you actually expected to do? When you say yes to being a facilitator, what are you saying yes to? And then I go through best practices for each of those areas of responsibility. So we walk through the immersion experiences, the guest speakers, how to prepare for sessions, what do you actually do in a session, how might you handle conflict in a session. Those are just some of the examples of the topics we cover. And it's an hour-long training. If you look on our website under events, you'll see the upcoming trainings. If those dates do not work for you, I am always happy to add dates. I just do 2 a month as a baseline. So send me an email and we can add a date on the calendar, put it up on the event page for anyone else who might find that time workable in their schedule. So don't hesitate to reach out. And if you are a part of a facilitator team, let's say you're in an organization or a church that wants to do 4 small groups in the fall, I would be more than happy to schedule a facilitator training that's for your team that focuses on your particular program. So you're welcome to send me an email about that as well. All right, Kristen, someone has asked if there is a special training for the Racial Justice series, and if so, what is that training?
Sure. Yes, there is a training that we ask all facilitators to go through before they begin the program. And that is, there's a webinar given by our consultant, Dr. Vicki Lott. It's a 1-hour webinar and it will take you through how to facilitate this program. Dr. Vicki Lott, she has a lot of experience in this, in facilitating conversations about race all throughout the nation. She has many years of experience with this. And she just does a phenomenal job. She's also made herself available to answer questions if there are questions that she might be able to better answer than me or Leela. She's also made herself available to answer those questions as well. So that is what the facilitator training is for that particular program.
The cost of the facilitator training, there is no cost. We provide that for facilitators as free support. So the training with Dr. Vicki Brennan-Lott that Kristen mentioned is free, and it's a recorded training for facilitators made available in their online account. The live training that I lead is also free, and you don't have to be a registered facilitator to sign up. So even if you're wanting to decide if that's a role you could take on and want to come to really learn about the role of being a facilitator, sign up, come check it out, ask your questions, and we're happy to have experienced facilitators and new folks join.
I will say too that we have really tried to give you as much information as possible when you're leading the session. So for example, in the session outlines that you would use as a facilitator, there is a script there. So you know exactly what to say and when to say it. You're not winging it, so to speak. We really try to give you as much support as possible.
Someone has asked about an evaluation of this event, and we will include a survey link in the follow-up email that has an opportunity to evaluate our event today. We love feedback at Just Faith Ministries. We adjust our programs every year based on the feedback of participants and facilitators. We adjust our events based on feedback. So if you would like to, feel free to complete that survey and we'll take in the wisdom we can gain and adjust for next time. Okay, Kristen, I have one more question, it looks like. Someone has asked if the Just Faith Catholic is different than the Catholic series. So I'm wondering if they're wondering about the Good News People program. Maybe just if you would say what the Catholic programming is that we offer.
Absolutely, yeah. So the Just Faith Catholic program is specifically about poverty in our local communities, how we can stand in solidarity with people experiencing poverty and work to end poverty. That's the Just Faith Catholic series. That's 3 parts. The Good News People program is more on theology and how that applies. And it's broadly the basic tenets of Catholic faith, the Catholic tradition, and how that applies to our both daily lives and to justice issues. So the first one's on poverty, and the second one is more broad on theology and justice.
Thank you, Kristen. Okay, it looks like I've got one last question. So if anyone else has a question, send it over now. This has asked about best practices for finding people to participate in a small group, and that's a great question. Our biggest suggestion for finding participants is to consider what networks you're a part of or are connected to. Most oftentimes, folks will find participants in their faith communities, and family and friends and coworkers through local nonprofits that they volunteer with. Now, as I mentioned, that promotion kit gives you the tools you need to communicate what is this program offering and where people can learn more. So it gives you the content you need. So really maybe spend some time considering what channels you can promote that information through. If you'd like to talk more about your networks and maybe the best ways to reach out, feel free to give me a call. I will note that in January, when we will be moving to that individual registration model, we will also be updating our website. And with that update will be the capacity to actually put information about an upcoming program out into our national audience. And so, for example, I live in Norfolk, Virginia, and if I wanted to facilitate a program, I could go and post that on there. And then anyone else in the area who sees it can ask to join the small group. If I want to lead a virtual small group, then I could post that on there, and anyone across the country who is available at that time can join the small group. So we're hoping with this new website feature that we will help in that process to bring groups together. But until then, use all the networks that you have. And I got a few more questions. Is there specific Zoom training? Yes, there is. So in my follow-up email, I will send information about the traditional facilitator training as well as the Zoom training. Those are held twice a month, usually the same weeks as the regular training. I lead the Zoom training. And what I said about the facilitator training applies to the Zoom training. Let me know if the dates don't work and we can find a time to learn about the platform together. Kristen, this is a good one for you, I think. Would you suggest for a group to start with the Good News People program or with one of our other programs, maybe the Just Faith Catholic program? If you're a part of a Catholic community, where would you suggest they begin?
It really depends on what the passion is in your congregation. If you already have ministries around one of these topics, let's say that you have a community garden or you're the eco-justice Sacred Land Food and Farming might be a great place to start. If you have a ministry around poverty and homelessness, then a Just Faith Catholic series might be a good place to start. However, if your congregation is a little bit nervous about diving into social issues and is a little bit new to community action and mission, then I would suggest starting with the Good News People program, because it gets at some of those basic theological principles that everyone would hold in common and shows how they apply to our action and our care for and with our neighbors.
Someone has asked if the 3 programs in a series can be spaced out or if they all need to be done within 12 months. And that's a great question. How you schedule your program offerings is really up to you. I would recommend allowing for some space between each program in a series for people to process, maybe even to begin to take action around what they've learned and to get engaged in their community. But I'd also encourage you not to take so much time that you lose that sense of connection and energy. So most groups take about at least a month off, 2 weeks to a month off. And then there are some groups who will take 3 months off because that's what works for the small group and their schedule. So I'd recommend not too far apart. But at the end of the day, I tell facilitators this all the time, you have to do the best you can within what is available to you. So if you're working to offer this program to a group of people who are incredibly busy and only have so much time to give or are only available at a certain time of the year, then make it available when they're available. So know who you're trying to offer it to, know what's realistic, and then adjust as needed. And I think I answered another question that came in, which is, does this have to flow on a fall to spring schedule? No. There are groups that meet over the summer. There are groups that meet during Advent. You can meet at any point throughout the year. And if you need to take a break for a week off for a holiday, again, it's just knowing your availability and the availability of the folks that you'll be facilitating the program for. And great question. Does the year start in January or is it flexible? Again, you can start the program wherever. At Just Faith Ministries, we update our programs every year, and our updated programs are released in July over the summer. So you can start and finish a program wherever, but know that we at Just Faith Ministries are updating our program based on the feedback every year, and those new program releases are in July. And then I think this is the actual last question that we will end on. And Kristen, I'll let you answer this one. Do you recommend taking the Just Faith program first, or do you recommend jumping into one of the more topical programs first?
I would say wherever you want to start, again, wherever the passion and energy is in your community, go with that. There's no real need to take the Just Faith program first, unless you want to.
Okay. I'm sure, well, I'm not sure. I think I've done my best to scroll through the chat to see every question, but it can become a lot to weed through when there's a lot of questions coming in. So if I did not answer your question, I apologize, and reply back to my email I send out tomorrow, the follow-up email, and I'll get an answer to you. But I believe I've done my best to answer everyone. Again, we really are thankful that you joined us this afternoon, and we appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to learn about the programs that we offer. I'd like to end our time together with just the closing stanza from Jan Richardson's prayer, and look forward to speaking with you in the near future. If you'd pray with me. Oh, hear us as this day we say grace.